Hello everybody. I'm really happy to be speaking in Dordrecht, since this is my new hometown for a couple of years already. And so I live just across the train tracks, so I'm really excited to be doing this home match kind of thing. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do as an eating designer. Essentially, designers, product designers, or designers in general, they make everything for humans. They make cars, they make bikes, they make houses, they make clothes. Everything is aimed for the human being. But the very thing that humans need to live, food, they just seem to forget. And I think that's very awkward. And this is the next slide, right? Yeah. So 12 years ago, I was a student at the Design Academy in Eindhoven, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just going to all these workshops and trying out different materials and trying to find my material to work with. So I tried things with wood and with ceramics and with plastics and with knittings, and I went to these things and I just tried and experimented, and then after the school's day I went home. And then I went to my kitchen to make dinner. And while I was in my kitchen, I thought, well, my kitchen tools, they're just like workshop tools. And when I open my cupboards, I have lots of materials. Why don't I combine those? So I started working with the idea of food and design. And as one could say, food and design, you're a food designer, which kind of makes sense. But if you think of it, it would also mean or imply that I would actually design food. But I think food is perfectly designed by nature. I don't have to change anything of that. But what I think is much more interesting than just making a new shape of food is to look at the verb of eating. Because if you look at the verb of eating, you can also think and be inspired with cooking, harvesting, the psychological effect of food in your body, the cultural effect of food, food rituals, the agriculture, transporting of food, all these things that surround the act of eating are inspiring to me. And that's what I'm working with. So that's why I call myself an eating designer. And I'm just going to run you through a couple of projects that I did to give you a little bit of insight, because I still have troubles explaining to my grandmother what I do, because she still says, oh, that's nice, then you make a lovely birthday cake with pink frills on it. So it's always difficult. And, but in the end, the thing I like most to say is that I design shit. Because that's what happens, and I'm really happy actually that I'm designing shit. Because in this consumer society, the thing that I make is something you consume, and it ends up in the toilet, so there will be nothing left. So this is not a chronological story, but I started in 1999 with food and trying to find my path in the world of eating design, which was very exciting because then nobody was doing this, and it was still something, and I think it still is something very much to be discovered. And so I was doing this, and people kept asking me to do Christmas dinners, because what's nicer than a Christmas dinner? But I thought, well, I don't know, because, you know, all these cliches with turkeys and Christmas puddings and decorations, what can a designer do with Christmas dinner? But then I thought, you know, if you think about the essence of the story of Christmas, which besides the story of Jesus Christ, for me, is about being together and sharing food together, I can imagine something that would connect people. So what you see here is a rather simple intervention of a tablecloth that normally hangs down to the ground, is taken up into the air and has some slits in it, and is becoming a new space where you can actually sit inside. And I thought it was very scary to do this. These were 40 people that didn't know each other at all, that were joining this dinner. And I had some reasons for doing this. First of all, physically you're connected to each other, because if I pull here, you can feel it there. But also to be in this strange situation where you can also only see heads and hands, it also connects people to each other because they are experiencing this funny situation all together. And last of it was a kind of communist idea that if you can't see your clothes, which reveal lots of your identity, you feel more equal to each other and therefore you're more connected. This is the nicest. If you go to the bathroom, you only see the backs. And this one I did in Tokyo, which was even more scary for me to do, because the first one you saw, it was in Amsterdam. And in Tokyo, everybody was behaving very formal, also 40 people that didn't know each other. And I just thought people were going to refuse to sit into my installation. But what I noticed was that when people entered the space, they were acting very formal. But once they were incorporated in the tablecloth, they became very playful. It was as if their masks were falling off and if they were becoming children and opening their hearts to the idea, which was a very interesting thing to experience. So, of course, it's not only the setting, and this is a great example of why I say I'm not a food designer, because this lady is having plain melon. But what you can see is that her plate is cut in two halves. Everybody on her side of the table has this same side of plates with melon. And everybody on the opposite side of the table has the same plates, but has ham. Well, ham and melon is a classical combination. Everybody knows they should be combined together. So people just start to share their food. You don't have to tell them what to do, they just do it. And it's really in our essence of being that we like to share food. And especially in Japan, people are not used to having big pieces of meat on the table. And for the main course, the first person would get a huge piece of rib. The next person would get a pumpkin stuffed with seeds and nuts and everything from the oven, very delicious. The third person would get a whole lettuce. The lettuce would be cleaned, but would be still one whole and would have dressing and crouton and everything on top. And the last person would get potatoes. So people just naturally start to share and start to cut up things and made a big mess, which was fantastic. This is another project that's very dear to me. This one I did here in Rotterdam at the Historical Museum. And they had an exhibition about the Second World War. And it was especially aimed for the hunger winter that was a part of the Second World War in Rotterdam especially. And they asked me to make food for this, this project. And what I did was I went to the Resistance Museum and I asked for some original handwritten war recipes. And so they were beautiful with the old spelling of meat with asheha. And what I did was actually very simple. I made this food and I didn't change anything of it. I just made little snacks and I presented them on a cardboard plate, like a little ration. And when people entered, they got a coupon, like you would get in the war, a coupon. And with this coupon, you could get your ration and some surrogate coffee. And what happened there was there were some people at this exhibition that were children during the time of war. And these people, they had experienced this time, but they haven't tasted this kind of food for over 65 years. So by taking this food and putting it into their mouth, the food went to their bellies, but it also went to their brains in the way that they got back memories from that time that they seemed to have forgotten. And these memories were very emotional, but also very beautiful, because it was a part of their lives, of their childhood, that they completely had forgotten about. And I think the power of food and the emotional effect that food can have on one's being, I think that's for me a very big drive to, as a designer, work with food. So I really like to go to supermarkets. I think supermarkets are a very interesting place because every time I go to supermarkets, I wonder about lots of things and I never really understand why the things in the supermarket are the way they are. And one of my main points of interest is the section of vegetarian alternatives. So mostly the vegetarian alternatives are made from soy protein or other kinds of protein. You can just make strings of protein and shape them into any shape you want. And mostly what I find is that people that don't want to eat meat want to eat an alternative, but then they eat something that looks like meat and also sounds like meat. So they have these kind of things that looks like sausage, and they call it sausage. And then you have burgers, and then you have schnitzels, and then you have fillets, and then you have minced. But you never know what kind of animal it is, because it has no animal inside. So I'm just a little bit confused, because if you can give it any shape, why would you want to make it look like meat? And for me, it kind of feels that I eat something that has no soul. So I'm a bit confused, but apparently people like it to have the sense of meat. So I thought, well, if you can make it any shape, why don't we just invent new animals? So what you see here is an animal, which is the herbast, and this animal lives in the herbal fields of France, where it runs through the fields. And because it has to be camouflaged for predators, it has a fur that is grown with herbs. And this fur keeps it protected from predators, but it also makes the meat already pre-seasoned, which is great for the stir-fry chops that you see in the top. And this animal is also square-shaped, which is fantastic for transport and for packaging. And also when you're at the table, you have an equal dividance of the meat. This is a smaller species, which is the ponty. And the ponty is a rodent kind of animal which lives in empty volcanoes. And there it feeds itself on the ashes of the volcano. And therefore the meat of this animal is very lightly and delicately pre-smoked. And also it has a rather firm tail, so you can take it by the tail, and it's great for a party snack, and you keep your hands clean. This is a vegetarian fish. It's the bikyo, and it lives in the shallow waters of Japan, where it feeds itself on the seaweed. And a real connoisseur can see that, because it has all the green stripes in the meat. And it is very high in antioxidants, which is very healthy, of course. And because it's very aesthetic in the coloring, it's great to use for sushi or sashimi. So here you can see the bikyo fillet, as how you can buy it in the shop. And this is world's first dessert meat. So this is a bird which lives in the maple trees in Canada, where it feeds itself on the sap of the trees, and it combines very well with ice cream or with chocolate. Here you can see the making of the meat. These are prototypes. We made them with marzipan, and as you probably know, in Holland we have a tradition on making marzipan animals around in the beginning of December. But actually I'm working on trying to make them for real, maybe together with the vegetarian butcher, to make a pop-up shop to actually have people taste them. So some smaller things. These are some marshmallow clouds made with real rainwater, which we have plenty of here in Holland. And some marshmallow icebergs that melt in your hot chocolate for inner global warming. And these are some sugar spoons that you can melt in your tea and add sugar to your tea and have no dishes to do. And this is a lollipop that visualizes what sugar does to your body. Which is actually rather scary if you give them to children. And they like them. So, speaking about children, this is my daughter, Uni. And she's lovely. She's a little bit older now, but here she was like 2.5. And, well, Uni is lovely, but she just refused to eat her vegetables. And I just thought, yeah, I can't have that, you know. It's very bad marketing for me. So I had this plan, because I read in this research that children have to taste something 7 times before they will accept the flavor. Another thing is that I think if children are difficult eaters and you put them at the dining table, lots of children will start to resist immediately if they are put in the setting of a dining table, because they know now the war is starting, we are eating. So I think to take them out of this setting is something that could help the process. What I did is I invited her with all her friends of the daycare, and we got together, and I told them they were going to do a workshop, a jewelry making workshop, and it was called Bling Bling for the boys. And it was making jewelry with vegetables, and the tools they could use for the jewelry were their teeth. So well, what I noticed is that, of course, they weren't eating because we were making jewelry, and so they were chewing away, making all these things. And some children suddenly thought, well, where's my ring? Because they just ate it. And to take them out of the setting of the dining table and to combine food with a playful way and tasting it over and over again really made them eat the vegetables. So I can proudly state that Junie eats her vegetables now, and if that wasn't true, I wouldn't have showed you this. Although they're cute, though. So the last thing I want to show you is one of my recent projects I did in Hungary. And I want to let you know before I start this film that you have to realize that gypsies, it's a project about gypsies, in Hungary are regarded very low. The Hungarian society really refuses to accept gypsies into their society. But, these people didn't know who were the ladies that fed them, and I wanted to do that first because I think they would feel more at ease if you don't know who it is, but also because if you know who it was, then you would think, oh, I hate old gypsies, but she's nice. And now I hope that people would have a bit of a wider view the next time they would meet a gypsy. And I think food is very much intertwined with love, because it's the two things that we need as people. So my book's called Eat Love, and that's what I want to share with you.